Hi, I'm Zoe, and I am going to be rereading the entire ACOTAR series in preparation for the 2 new book releases coming out for it. Oh my god, Beauty and the Beast. I can get it out of the freaking... Thank you. I love this book. I got my little notes. We're at the part where he's saving her. He literally just said your name 2 seconds before. You just noticed right now. Like, there's so many things. I've finished A Court of Thorns and Roses for the 2nd time. I could not be more excited. I absolutely loved this series when I read it a few years ago, and I do forget a lot of it. I am just so excited to not only reread the series, but also to get the 2 new books. Incredible. And while I'm doing it, I figured that would be such a fun reading vlog. Rereading this series and kind of coming at it from a totally different perspective. Can we just talk for a second about how this announcement happened? I mean, talk about 2 worlds colliding. If you're like me, I absolutely adore Call Her Daddy, and I absolutely adore Sarah J. Maas and like the series that she wrote on. Actually, I didn't know a lot about Sarah J. Maas. I loved this series, so I loved her as a writer, but I didn't know much about her at all. So for those 2 worlds to collide and then using that to announce the 2 new books, one I think is coming in October and one is coming in January of 2027, that's wild. So she said it's gonna be 1 story, 2 parts, or like 2 parts of 1 story. So I'm really interested to read that. I like what she said, where she was basically explaining like normally in a series, even though it's part of a whole story, each book is its own stories. Each book has its own arc, has its own plot, that type of thing. And she was explaining like it's not going to be like that. It might not have a completely finished arc because it's going to be split into 2 books and it's going to be truly like a 2-part thing. I really appreciate that caveat because I do feel like a lot of people would go in reading it like it's supposed to be a full thing, and that would be like the main critique. And then I just liked hearing about her. I realized like I did not know a lot about her. Apparently like this and Throne of Glass and Crescent City, she was writing when she was like a teenager, and she had to go to so many publishers just to get this published. And like one publisher said that they would publish it. And apparently this was during the time where dystopian, Hunger Games, all that was super popular, and so like fantasy wasn't really a thing. And that just made so much sense in my head of why this series got so popular, because I feel like when there's one genre of something that's really popular and really happening, when another series, a different series in a different genre comes in that's really good, kind of brings that genre back to life, and then that series becomes super popular. And I feel like that's what happened here. Now, I will say I have not read Throne of Glass. I have not read Crescent City. I want to. I don't. One thing at a time. You know what I mean? One thing at a fucking time. I need coffee. Probably don't, but I do. Now, here's a few things about my reading journey that will kind of give more context to this video and why I'm so excited to do this. So I started reading when I was like super young. It all started with the Aragon series. I feel like all fantasy girlies, like it all starts with the Aragon series when you're like 12. You know what I mean? And I would stay up until 2 a.m. finishing the book, wanting to see what's next, all of that sort of stuff. I feel like I still haven't felt that high to this day off of a book. And then in high school and college, same old story of I stopped reading because I was reading for school. I didn't want to read anymore, and I didn't find anything that was super interesting. And then this series happened, and I read this series, and it completely sparked my love of reading again. That was a few years ago. After that, my reading was on and off. Like I read a few books here, a few books there. And then at the beginning of 2025, I read Fourth Wing. And when I tell you that like jump-started. If you had, what's that thing that you zap people's hearts with? Like a defibrillator on my reading heart? Like, that's what Fourth Wing was. And it literally just like jump-started me into a huge reading thing. And I went from reading a few books a year to last year, I think I read 45-ish books. So this series means a lot to me. Like, it definitely jump-started me back into reading. It wasn't the biggest push. I think Fourth Wing was the second push, but it was one of the pushes that really got me back to reading. Recently, I have completely fallen out of love with fantasy books. I loved this series. And then I read Fourth Wing beginning of last year. And I loved Fourth Wing, the first book, but was not a fan of Iron Flame and Onyx Storm, which I feel like is a pretty popular opinion on that series. And ever since then, I just have not been loving fantasy books. And I think it's because most of it is heavily actually romantic-y. Like, I read Quicksilver, and then I read Brimstone, which is the second book in the Quicksilver series. That was a time. And I just, like, I felt so discouraged with fantasy. And I literally made a TikTok of, do I not like fantasy books anymore? Like, is this just what it is? Like, has my reading just matured where I've read all of these books since reading? I mean, my baseline was really, this series was really ACOTAR. And so I was thinking, like, you know, I've read so many books in so many different genres since ACOTAR. Maybe I just don't like fantasy anymore, and the only reason I liked ACOTAR it was because it was one of the first book series I read getting back into reading. And you know, as you read more books, you read more genres, you learn to read more critically, and you have a higher bar the more and more you read. Also, there's so many books I want to read, so I'm not going to waste my time reading a book that I don't love. What happened to me last year is I started with Fourth Wing, didn't love the series, then I really got into romance books, and I just read like a ton of romance books. And then I got completely burnt out from romance books, and then this year I'm starting going into more literary fiction, historical fiction. Kristen Hanna were so shocked. And I've been really loving that. So this year, I really want to mix up my reading. A couple years ago, I was heavily fantasy. Last year, I was heavily romance. And this year, I want to mix it up. I want to have a little bit of romance, a little bit of literary fiction, a little bit of fantasy. And I think I'm on track to do that. I've read some good literary fiction this year, some good historical fiction, some good romance. And this will be my fantasy. And I'm really, really, really excited about this. Oh, can we talk about how she also said that there's probably going to be like a third new book to finish off the series? Like, when's the series going to end? Like, no offense. Like, oh my God. So are we, like, eventually we're going to have a third new book. And it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books. Wild. So here's how I'm going to structure this rereading vlog of ACOTAR. I'm going to make this a bunch of parts. I don't know if it's going to be per book or per week because I am a bit of a slower reader. I am not a full-time book talker or book YouTuber or booktuber. I work full-time. I'm a mom to a 1.5-year-old and I'm very busy. And it's hard for me to get in time to read. So I read like 4 to 5 books, 4 to 6 books a month. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books right here. So it'll probably take me at least a month to get through these. And that's only if I'm reading only these. So what I'm thinking is I'm just going to make a video a week. See how that goes. I'm going to make it a mix of spoilers and spoiler-free. So if I'm talking about a spoiler, I'm just going to make it really clear that it's a spoiler part and it's going to have like a nice spoiler warning. I absolutely adore watching Plant-Based Brides YouTube video. I don't know, like, if you know her, you know, but she does the best spoiler reading. She's like the queen of reading vlogs. The way she does updates, the way she does non-spoiler sections and then spoiler sections, and the way she has like the border around her thing so you know that it's a spoiler. Oh, like, I just love her so much. I love her videos so much. And so I think I'm going to try to emulate that a little bit when I'm going through this. As I'm reading, I'll do live updates while I'm reading, and I'll also do check-ins once I get through maybe a quarter of the way through a book or halfway through a book. If you've ever watched Plant-Based Brides, like, I'm trying to like emulate her videos because I absolutely adore her reading vlogs. So it'll kind of be that structure. If I can get this out of the thing, oh my god. Okay. So with that being said, we are going to start. If I can get it out of the freaking... Thank you. We're going to start with a quick little update on A Court of Thorns and Roses. Oh, by the way, so I have the physical books. This is the other thing. This is the other thing. I didn't have the physical books when I read these. I never buy physical books. Well, I shouldn't say never. I rarely buy physical books. They're very expensive. I'm just like a normal person, and so I don't have $500 to spend on books every month. That's just not a thing. And so I do a lot of Kindle, I do a lot of audiobooks, and I do a lot of library books, and that's mostly where I get my books from. So I rarely had the physical copies. This is a whole story. So my amazing friends gave me a $100 Barnes & Noble gift card for my birthday. They know me so well. And of course, I spent it on, I knew that I wanted to reread this series. So I spent it on the physical set of this, and this was $95. Yeah. So I was really excited to get the physical copies of these because I knew this go around I wanted to be a lot more intentional with reading these books. When I read them before, I wasn't much of a critical reader. I was kind of just reading them to read them, which is great. You don't have to be a critical reader all the time. But I really wanted to be for this go around. So I'm going through and I'm making my little, if I buy a book, I'm not afraid to write in it, but I'm making my little underlines and annotations. I don't have tabs, you see. I got my little notes right here. I don't have tabs, but if I do get tabs, I will start tabbing it because I definitely have some things. So as I go through, I'm just going to make notes as I go through, annotations, all of that. And then when I do updates, it'll be easier for me to cover that. But I'm literally so covered because I have the Kindle books that I bought when I originally read these. I still have those on my Kindle. I got the audiobook from my library, and then I have the physical book. So we are so covered. Like, we are ready to go. We are ready to go. Last time I was reading the book, I read it on my Kindle. So let me just see. I'm at chapter 14, page 128, which is 31% through. So we're making it through. When did I start reading it? I track all my reading on Fable. I absolutely love Fable. Fable till I die, honestly. I will shout Fable from the rooftops. So I can see when I started reading this. I started reading this on the 10th. And today is what, the 14th? So I started reading it 4 days ago. I'm 30% of the way through. We're doing good. Also, that was while I was reading Lisa Rinna's new memoir. What's it called? You better believe I'm going to talk about it. You better believe I'm going to talk about it. But now I'm fully 100% focused on these. So I'm really excited to be 100% focused on these. I'm going to stop yapping about nothing and start actually talking about the book. My thoughts so far is I love this series. One of the reasons why I wanted to reread it is because I wanted to see if maybe I didn't like it as much anymore. Like I said, I wasn't as critical of a reader as I was last time I read it. I've read a lot more books since then, and I wanted to see if maybe my taste had changed. Maybe I don't like fantasy anymore. Maybe it's not my thing anymore. I'm eating it up. I am eating it up, and I'm only 128 pages in. I love it. I love it. It also reminded me, I really like Sarah J. Maas's writing. She does a really nice mix of writing plainly, but also describing things in really beautiful ways without being too flowery. I don't mind flowery writing at all, actually. Like, if I'm reading a book that has very flowery, metaphorical writing, I appreciate it, you know? I'll eat that up too. But there's some things that she writes about where she does a great job describing the thing while still speaking plainly. There's this one part where it says, his remaining golden eye now stared at the snow-heavy sky, and for a moment I wished I had it in me to feel remorse for a dead thing. But this was the forest, and it was winter. That's not super crazy writing, but I love the way she described that moment. Like, that's the perfect way to describe that moment. She had just killed this animal. She wanted, and she honestly, she felt no remorse. She needed it. And the way, as I was reading the first beginning of this, which is mostly when Farah is starving and struggling and hunting and kind of telling her story of living in her home, I really appreciated the way that Sarah J. Maas described need, desperation, hunger, starvation, like having to fight for your will to live, essentially. I realized as I was reading this, the way she describes that, she just described it so well. There were so many parts where I really felt in my heart what Farah was feeling and going through without being slapped over the head with it. Without saying it so plainly that it was boring, but also not being completely slapped over the head with it. I think she does a great job of showing and describing without just straight up telling it. There were a few parts where just reading it, knowing what happened is crazy. Like when they're walking through the streets and they run into those like fairy sympathizers. Someone yelled at them, "Fairy loving whore." One of them hurled at the young women. I couldn't disagree. And I mean, if you know, you know. There's so many things where rereading it gets interesting. Like when you reread it and you know what happens, you're like, oh, I'm paying a lot more attention to the world building this time. I don't think I paid a ton of attention to the world building when I read it a while ago. And I'm realizing there's so many things that I forgot. The amount of things that I have forgotten, and I'm only at page 128, is pretty insane. I'm actually so excited to read this series over again because there are genuinely so many things that I've forgotten. It's crazy. And as I'm reading this, like, I keep remembering the things that I've forgotten, and I was like, oh my god, I do need to reread this. If I read the 2 new releases, I wouldn't know a thing. I would not know a thing. A character could walk in. I wouldn't know that man. So far, I'm loving reading the themes of power imbalances, class imbalances, poverty versus the rich, and also just the conversation of how, like, generally evil people can be. There's one part where she describes what happened when she was very little, when what was it, collectors came in to her home and destroyed his leg and broke his leg and all of that. The way that scene is described, it really reminds me of the themes of people can really be as evil and mean as they want to be, especially when power and money is involved. And as I'm reading this, it's really hit me. I really get the theme of power, money, and land can make people so evil. And I liked how Sarah J. Maas was kind of approaching those topics and themes while writing this. Even when she gets to Tamlin's home and they're eating dinner and they have so much food, it reminds you of the Hunger Games, right? Similar to the Hunger Games of they have so much food, they just simply don't know what to do with it. They have so many leftovers. And you just sit there thinking like, oh my god, I'm literally fighting for my life. And these people are just sitting here with abundance of everything. I mean, it's so prevalent to today. It's so prevalent all the time. That will always exist. Those power imbalances will always exist. The gap between impoverished and the rich will always exist. And that will always be a thing. If I have to be so unbelievably nitpicky, I have one unbelievably nitpicky thing, but I do have this one really picky thing that I don't actually care about. I just thought it was so picky that it was funny. She's walking around, Tamlin calls out to her and is like, girl, you know? And she thought he forgot her name and was like, he probably cares about me so little that he doesn't even remember my name. So as they're talking, he actually does say Farah at some point. And she acknowledges what he said, but she didn't acknowledge that he said her name, which means he didn't forget her name. And later on in the conversation, he said Farah again. I might take an animal form, but I am civilized, Farah. And she thinks to herself, so he did remember my name, at least. And I was just thinking, like, he literally just said your name 2 seconds before. You just noticed right now. But when he said the name 2 seconds before, she was thinking about how he forgot her name. So it'd make more sense for her to think about the fact that he remembered her name soon after she was thinking about how he forgot it. You know what I mean? That was me being really picky. With all that being said, I am really enjoying this so far. My love for this series is coming back. As I reread this, more and more memories of what happened in the plot line and the world building and all of that is coming back. Now that I'm rereading it with a more critical mind, I'm understanding more of the world, and it's making me like the book and the series even more. I'm also loving and appreciating her writing even more. I really didn't take note of her writing before when I read this, and I really, really like it. I really like her writing style. Like I said, she toes the line between speaking plainly and very flowery really, really well. She has that mix so well done. I'm gonna go read this, and I'll check back in with you probably at the halfway mark or if something really crazy happens. I'm telling you, I don't remember anything from this series except that I loved it and the main plot lines. So there's definitely going to be some moments of genuine reactions to things that I completely forgot about. And if you're wondering where said 1.5-year-old is right now, he is taking a nap. And that is just about the only time when he's sleeping that I am able to actually sit down and read. So I really cherish these moments. Okay, spoiler section in 3, 2, 1. We're at the part where he's saving her from the Naga, I don't know how to pronounce that. I love that. I love the whole, like, he's saving her, he's rescuing her. I'm so sorry. Not that she's a damsel in distress. She is not. She is a very powerful, strong woman, but God, I love that trope. Like, he's saving her, and I love it. I love it so much. I love it. Also, I remembered a few things that I had forgotten. Number 1, the whole mask situation. Completely forgot that. Number 2, the fact that they can't tell lies. I'm editing this right now, and they totally can, and what's so funny is it literally fooled me as I was reading it. I had forgotten the whole thing of can they tell lies or can't they tell lies, and in the moment it fooled me of, oh yeah, they can't tell lies. I forgot that. They literally can. I read it like a couple pages later that they actually can. And yeah, misinformation that got me twice on rereading it. She just got done with talking to the sorrel, and my only thought there was I wish she asked better questions. Like, I feel like we did a lot, and I feel like, you know, that was a lot for not a lot of information, which is maybe the point, but I feel like maybe better questions could have been asked. I love this book. Also, I know what happens with Tamlin. Like, I know, but I'm living in the moment. Like, I decided when I'm rereading this that I'm going to live in the moment of the book that I'm reading. Like, we all know what's going to happen, but in this moment, in time of reading this book, right here and now, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Her attraction to Tamlin is starting, and I love it. I love it. I love it. I know what happens, but like I said, I'm living in the moment of the time of the book, and I love a good lead up. You know what I mean? We are starting to get more of the she, like referring to, I forget her name, but the evil woman. I forget her name. But the one who's very evil and we hate, and we learn more about through the rest of the story. And now that I know the rest of the story, I'm really trying to pay attention to all the times that she's brought up so that I can get a fuller picture as we approach that part of the story. I'm also trying to, I didn't mention this before, but in the beginning, I was trying really hard to pay attention to Nesta and Nesta's story because, you know, her story gets focused on more later in the series. And I wanted to try to focus on her a little bit. So I'm really enjoying rereading this series because there's certain things that I'm like, oh yeah, focus on that. Remember that. Oh, what's the answer to this? Like, you know, and kind of thinking as I'm reading about how it all connects together. And it's really interesting reading from it from that perspective and knowing like what to specifically focus on and think. There's a scene where a fairy is dying, and I think when I read this book, I cried, and I just like cried and teared up and got really emotional over it. That's such a rough scene, and it's so sad. And I just had to share that this book still makes me cry to this day. It's the next day, and I am 50% of the way through. I was just listening to it on audio. I got the audiobook on Libby through my library, and I'm at 56%. Now that I'm halfway through, let's do a little bit of a check-in. I love this book. I love this series. Like I was saying in the beginning, I was thinking that maybe once I started doing this video that I would start reading, and given the time that has passed since I read these books and given all the books that I've read since, I thought maybe I wouldn't like it as much. That is not the case. That is not the case at all. I absolutely love this book. I love the writing. I love the build-up. I love the romance. I love the plot. I like the characters. Like, it's just giving everything. I like the humor. I love it. The pacing is so good. Like, there's always something happening. And you know what? When I first read, now maybe it's because I know it's coming, so there's a little bit more of a draw for me. When I first read this book, I think I actually like this book more now than when I first read it, because when I first read it, I thought it was slow. And now that I know what's going to happen and I'm kind of paying attention to little things a little bit more, I don't think it's slow at all. I don't think it's slow at all. And I have been eating it up. And let me tell you, for me to get as far as I did in the last day and a half is wild. Like, I've been taking my toddler on stroller walks. I listened to the audiobook. I stayed up last night reading this book until like I couldn't hold my eyes open anymore. And you don't understand like what that means to me as a mom now. Like, my sleep means so much. My toddler still does not sleep through the night. My sleep means a lot to me. There's very little that I would sacrifice my sleep for. And I was staying up reading this book, and I just, and I already read it, but yeah. If you take anything away from this video, it's my high recommendation that if you already read the ACOTAR and you read it maybe a few years ago and you think you forgot a lot of it, I highly recommend rereading it, because for me, it's just as good as it was before. Even better, because like you have context to everything, so it makes everything a little bit more interesting. Couple thoughts and feelings. Number one, I am paying so much more attention to Alice this go around, which is kind of Farah's maid in the castle. It's like, I want to say she's Farah's maid, but I really don't know. I find her character so interesting. Her whole story of what happened to her sisters and her whole family, I find her a very interesting character, and I really kind of want to know more about her, and I don't remember them ever really getting into her character. I also love that dynamic in a book where, like, let's just say the main character is in a place where they're super uncomfortable and they don't know what's going on. For them to kind of have a friend that comes alongside them and helps them and supports them and that they feel comfortable with. I always love that in a book. That's very prevalent, like in Beauty and the Beast. Like, that's a classic. That's a classic. You know what I mean? So that's like in Beauty and the Beast and stuff. Also, the more I read this, the more I'm like, oh my god, Beauty and the Beast? Like, Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast. I forgot the element that children of the high fae, they call them younglings, are very rare and very valuable, and that does come into play later on in this book as well as the series as a whole. So I appreciated the reminder of that little detail. There are little plot details that I'm just, not even necessarily plot, more like world building, that I'm just paying attention to a little bit more. Like, there's this one part where it's referring to when she tried to trap the Suriel, and if you haven't read the book, the Suriel is like a creature and it gives you answers to things, and she tried to trap him. She was talking to Alice about it, and Alice said all you needed to do was offer it a new robe and it would have groveled at your feet. With no explanation. No explanation, no context, nothing to what that means. And I don't remember that aspect of the book, or if that gets answered of why that's a thing. So that's just something a little interesting that I underlined. Like, I would like to know what that means. I would like to know what that means. Another thing with the Suriel, and I don't really consider this spoilers because it's not really a huge part of the plot, but she tries to trap this Suriel, right? And for the sake of no spoilers, I won't tell you what happens. But she complains that Lucien didn't give her enough warning. In case you haven't read the book, Lucien, she asked him for advice on how to trap the Suriel and everything like that. And she complains that Lucien didn't give her enough warning. That part irked me a little bit, because I was like, girl, he literally told you not to. He literally told you not to. They both told you not to multiple times. One thing about her, she does not listen. And you know what? I relate. I don't listen either. If I was her, I would probably do the exact same thing, honestly. But that part irked me a little bit when she was like, oh, I can't believe Lucien didn't give me enough warning. I was like, he gave you plenty of, and he said that he didn't give her enough warning either later on, and I was like, I feel like you did. I feel like there's only so many times you can say it. If a girl doesn't want to listen, she's not going to listen. And that's just how it goes. If you're not going to listen, great, but don't blame them for you not listening. You know what I mean? That's what it is. I don't listen. At least I know that I don't listen. You know what I mean? Okay. There was a line in here. I love finding things in fictional books that I feel like relate to real life. So there's a line in here where they're talking about the past great war between humans and fairies. And there's this great war. Fairies had enslaved humans. The humans wanted to be free. And there was this war to split them and have the humans be free, and the fairies split from them. Farah was talking to one of the main characters about this war, how he felt about it, how she felt about it, or how she would have felt about it. And he was alive during that time, and he was saying that, you know, if he wasn't a child, if he was an adult, he would have been on the side of what's right, essentially. And she thought to herself, I wasn't sure if I would do the same. My priority would be to protect my family, and I would have picked whatever side could keep them safest. I hadn't thought of it as a weakness until now. You know, that is such a hard truth that I think a lot of people feel. We all want to believe that we'll do what's right in the moment and we'll be on the side of the right, and we'll clearly be able to see what's right and wrong in the moment. I think we're at a place in time where there's a lot of right and wrong things going on, and there's a lot of sides to things. And I just think that's an interesting perspective, that you might hope and think that you would be on the side of what's right, but a lot of times at the end of the day, you'll take the side that keeps you safe or your loved ones safe or your family safe, and that will take priority over what's technically right and wrong. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's kind of just the truth. And I thought that was a really interesting truth. Another thing about Farrah's character that I really like is the fact that she doesn't actually like hunting. There's been a few times where someone's brought up that, oh, you like hunting. You know, hunting's your hobby or whatever. And she's very quick to say, hunting's not my hobby. I do it so my family stayed alive. That's why I did it. I do it because I need to. I think there's a lot of things in life where we're doing something because we need to do it. It's a necessity. It's not necessarily something that we want to do. Maybe nothing as extreme as, you know, needing to hunt so that your family can eat and not starve to death. Maybe not to that extreme. But I feel like we all have a little something in our lives where we're doing it out of necessity. We're doing it because we need to, not necessarily because we love it or we want to. That detail has like a focus in her character. There's one part, someone was like severely hurt, and she said, I'd heard screams like that before in the forest at home when I didn't make a clean kill and the animals suffered. I couldn't stand it. And kind of talking about how that made her sick. That gives you, first of all, insight into her character, the compassion she feels for living things, the fact that her hunting and being good at hunting doesn't define her. That doesn't mean that she doesn't have a compassion for living things. It means that she was doing what she needed to do in order to keep her family alive. And she actually did what she needed to do despite severely disliking it and making her sick to her stomach at some points. During that whole scene that's related to, we got to see a lot of her compassion and empathy and like the softer side of her character, which I really enjoyed. Later on in the series, there's this evil woman, and we're getting more and more references to her. So as we reference her more, as she is referenced more in the book, I'm paying more and more attention because I know she's going to be so prevalent and so important to the plot. And so like anytime she's brought up, I underline that. This is an example of, I just love the writing. It's simple, but it's not boring. There was someone dying in the castle. It says, death wasn't just hovering in this hall. It was counting down the fairy's remaining heartbeats. Oh, you know, that I appreciate that sentence just because it's not just simply saying that the fairy's dying, but it's not like having like super crazy descriptions and metaphors and all of that. It describes something in a unique but simple way. And I really like that. I appreciate that. I think we got a good look into Farrah's character. I don't know. In this scene, this is a scene where someone's dying. I feel like we just got such a great look into her character during this whole scene. But there's a part where the person has died, or the fairy has died, and she thinks, I didn't know how long it took for a soul to fade from the body. I stood in the puddle of blood until it grew cold, holding the fairy's spindly hand and stroking his hair, wondering if he knew I'd lied when I sworn he would get his wings back, wondering if, wherever he had now gone, he had gotten them back. Oh! Also just referring to death and grief. that whole scene like hit me in my soul. And I really appreciated that scene for her character development because it showed us such a softer side to her. I was reminded of Lucian's background as a character, and I just keep finding things that like, oh my god, I'm so glad I'm rereading this book because it's reminding me of everything that happened with Lucian's character and his background and his family and his trauma. And I was like, oh, that's right. That's right. We're again getting examples of things where she just simply does not listen. On the night of, they have a night called Calanmai. I'm not going to talk about it at all because there's spoilers. But this girl really does not listen. Like, do not leave your room. It's not that hard. Does not listen at all. But again, I get it. I don't listen either. I get the girl. I really do. So it doesn't make me dislike her. It just makes me want to shake her. Okay, let's do a spoilers section in 3, 2, 1. It's spoilers time. And I'm going to have a little border around me so you know that it's spoilers. The romance in this moment in time, between Tamlin and Farah, I just love it. I just love it. I just love it. I eat it up. I really, really, really do. And everything that happened at Calanmai, is that how you pronounce it? Calanmai? Calanmai, yeah. Everything that happened at Calanmai and her running into, oh my god, her running into Rhys, you're kidding. You're kidding. Stop it. And then everything that happened between her and Tamlin, I eat it up. I'm so sorry. I do. I really, 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 really do. I know everything that happens with Tamlin in the end, but I'm reading this book again, living in the moment as if I don't know what's going to happen. And in the moment, I do love their romance. I really, really do. How many times can I say it? When he took her to the glen and they jumped in the water. Okay, they had their first kiss. I'm crying. Like, I'm reliving their love story all over again. And even though it ends terribly, I love it. I love it. I love love. In books, my favorite part of a romance in a book is the lead up, honestly. Like, it's terrible, but once I get past the lead up, I get pretty bored. but I love the lead up to a romance in the book. Now, we are getting more of Rhys. I just left off where he enters the castle and they're like hiding Farah and while they talk to him. And so now that I know what happens, I'm paying a lot more attention to when Rhys comes into the picture. When he wrote those poems of all the words that she didn't know and he turned them into poems and they were romantic, but also like there were some that weren't necessarily romantic, but you know, something else. Like I just love that. It's so funny. It makes you giggle. I love it when it makes you giggle. I'm paying a lot of attention to everything happening with the blight and any world building around that. So as magic weakens more and more, I've been trying to like keep track of what's happening because I do kind of forget how everything with the blight ends. I know it's related to Farah and I know the basics, but I do forget ultimately how it ends. So I wanted to keep track more. We learn about more about Tamlin's character. And I do have to say, interesting. So Sarah J. Maas mentioned this in her interview on Call Her Daddy when she announced the 2 new books. And she was saying how if she did do a story on Tamlin, it would be kind of showing his side of the story and why he is the way that he is. And there is a part where we learn more about him, about how terrible his father was, how he was very similar to Lucian, and how terrible his brothers were. And it does make my heart break for Tamlin a lot of the time. It really does. And I do know what happens. And I'm not sympathizing what happens to him, but I am sympathizing for his life. He's in a situation where he has no family. He is basically tortured every day by this mask that's been on his face for 50 years. He's dealing with this blight and in a position that he never wanted to be in the first place. We learn more about his heart and his empathy about how he hates killing these animals, and him and Farah kind of have that in common, where they have to do what they need to do. Either Farah when it comes to hunting, or him when it comes to killing these creatures that come into his lands. But he hates doing it. His heart hates killing these creatures. And he never wanted this position to begin with. And it's a pretty terrible position to have. But does he handle it very well? No. But I do love learning more about his character, because the things that he's endured, it makes sense. Like, it makes sense. It's not good, but it makes sense. With that being said, knowing what happens, you do start to see the signs as you're reading it, how they're talking, how him and Lucian talk to Farah, how they kind of talk down to her a lot. And they do treat her like she's dumb or she doesn't know anything, and it's not worth explaining things to her. Their first reaction is to lock her away or to hide her. Or, Cal and I was joking, saying like she doesn't listen, and she doesn't. And she probably should have stayed in her room. But you know what? If they told her the whole story of what would happen, maybe she would have stayed, or maybe she would have left, and that would have been her decision. But at least if she had the information, she would have been able to make that decision for herself. And you do see these signs come up and signals of what will happen. Again, I'm going to keep bringing up the Call Her Daddy interview, but I found it really interesting when Sarah J. Maas was talking about Tamlin. She kind of was saying how, like, women will come up to her and say, I left my abusive husband because of your stories, kind of referring to similarities between that and Tamlin, and kind of recognizing those signs and those signals of abuse. And it's so interesting because there are these signals, there are these signs, but you don't really see them as signs or signals of possible abuse or possible problems until the abuse happens. And then you realize. And once the abuse happens, it's too late. And it's interesting because that's kind of what you experience as a reader. Like, now that I know what happens, I'm like, oh my God, that's a signal, that's a signal, that's a signal. But when I first read this, I didn't think those were signals at all. And I think that's very, very similar to real life. Very similar to when you're in a toxic or abusive relationship. You don't even realize it. You don't even see the little signals, the way people speak to you, the way people treat you, until the actual abuse takes place. And then you go back in your head and you realize, wow, those were all signals, those were all signs. I was giggling and kicking my feet when she ran into Reese, when she said everything about the stranger radiated sensual grace and ease. High fae, no doubt. His short black hair gleamed like a raven's feathers, offsetting his pale skin and blue eyes so deep they were violet, even in the firelight. They twinkled with amusement as he beheld me. Ugh. Twinkled with amusement as he beheld me. I mean, I love fantasy books. Like, come on. Come on. Okay, one thing I am really enjoying, though, is I feel like we're seeing Farah come into herself a little bit more. She's getting healthy. She's eating. She's saying, like, I have curves. I look like a woman. I'm not starving anymore. We see her confidence rise. There was a part where Tamlin did try to tell her, you need to do blah, 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 or you need to listen to me. And she kind of took a step back and she said, hold on, don't tell me what to do. And knowing what ends up happening, ding, 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 ding. But I was so proud of her in that moment, especially knowing what ends up happening. I was so proud of her. Like, yes, confidence. I love it. Like, she's coming into herself. She's finding joy in painting. She's finding more confidence in her painting, showing Tamlin her paintings and being vulnerable in that way and having confidence in her artistry. You know, like when she first asked for her paints and her art, she was saying how she felt like she doesn't deserve to feel joy, and she's not good at painting, but she enjoys doing it. And now she's fully embraced doing what brings her joy, and she's more confident in it, being able to show people and be vulnerable about your art, because art is a very vulnerable thing. And it's terrifying showing people your art because you're showing a part of your heart, and if they reject that, it's almost like they're rejecting your heart. I love the confidence that we're seeing Farah built up in herself and just coming into her own. There's a part where she says, I wouldn't go as far as to call myself a beauty, but I hadn't cringed. A few months here had done wonders for the awkward sharpness and angles of my face, and I dared say that some kind of light had crept into my eyes, not my mother's eyes or Nesta's eyes, mine. And I think for most of Farah's life, she didn't focus on herself at all. It was about her sisters. It was about her dad. It was about her mom dying. It was about keeping everyone alive, taking care of everyone. What was her mother's wish? What was the promise she made for her mother? What does she need to do based on that promise? What does she need to do? There was never a point where she said, what does Farah need? How do I feel about myself? Because when you're in that point of need, you can't think about that stuff. That doesn't exist. Like, doing things that make you happy and looking at yourself, that doesn't exist. That's not a thing that happens. First rule is needs have to be met, and nothing else matters after that. And that's true in real life as well. To see her, now that her needs are met, and now that she has room to breathe, being able to actually look at herself and really look at herself and find herself and start to self-reflect and start to find joy in herself and find what makes her happy and what makes her feel good, and finding herself instead of thinking about everyone else. I've really loved that character arc that has started happening. Now we're at the end of the spoiler section, and with all of that being said, I'm going to continue reading, and I think I'll check in at around 75-ish%. I'll see you then. Also, for context, once again, my son is taking a nap, so this is my reading alone time. It's also a Sunday. Yesterday was Saturday, today's Sunday, so no work. Get to take things a little slower. No plans this weekend, which is very rare. It's a great time. section right now. Spoilers. Spoiler, spoiler, spoiler. In 3, 2, 1. It was just the scene of Rhys talking to Tamlin and Lucien and them hiding, like the first time he's seen them in 50 years or whatever, and them trying to hide Farah from Rhys, and then Rhys seeing Farah. It's so hard. That scene is so painful in so many ways. Number one, Tamlin not doing anything to protect Farah from Rhys. Like, I shouldn't say not doing anything. I know the thoughts going through his head is if he hurts Rhys, then Amarantha will probably retaliate. So he's trying not to do anything to Rhys. But his cowardice really, really, really showed in that moment. And that speaks to what happens down the line. It was hard seeing Rhys talk to them and Farah like that. And I'm like keeping that in the back of my head for later in the series and like kind of being able to pinpoint, because I know that there are reasons why Rhys speaks so cruelly and so how he does, but it was hard, like, hearing him say the things that he did, like threatening to hurt Lucien's mom, threatening to hurt Farah, referring to Farah as, like, human trash, and all of that sort of stuff. Like, it was really hard hearing him talk like that, especially knowing what I know of later on in the series and how he truly is. And so that was really hard. And then not only did Tamlin do nothing, but then to see him like get down on the ground and beg, like that is such a hard scene for like him begging him not to tell Amarantha about him, about Farah. I guess you could call that doing something, but I mean, that was a hard scene. I mean, this man is so broken. He's so tormented. He's basically given up. It's really sad to watch. It's like seeing a man just like break down. You know what I mean? When she says that her name is Claire Bador, and I know what happens with that, I was like, oh my God, that's that part. Yep. That one scene spoke to so many things that happens in the rest of the series. It is currently 9:45. I was just listening to it on audiobook. I am now 81% of the way through. I just put my son to bed and I figured this was a good time to do a little informal check-in. For a non-spoiler update, it's so hard at this point, you know, because it's like all spoilers, but for a non-spoiler update, I just have to say again how much I'm so glad that I reread this book. Like, if there is any series that you read a while ago that you loved and you're like, I don't know if I want to reread it, reread it. Reread it. There's probably so many things that you forgot. And rereading it, like the things that you do remember, it's even more interesting when you reread it because you come from the perspective of knowing what happens, and so you get to pay attention to the little details. I already talked about that, but like I just had to talk about it again because it's just it's so good. It's so good. We've gotten a lot of character development from Nesta, Farah's sister, and I'm really happy about that, and I paid more attention to that this go around because later on in this series there's Nesta's involved even more. I really wanted to pay attention to her character development this time around. I have to switch to a spoiler section. So 3, 2, 1, spoilers now. Okay. Like, so many things. So I just need freedom to talk. You know what I mean? Okay. My heart breaks for Tamlin so much And I realize I have so many mixed feelings around Tamlin. He makes me so frustrated and so angry on the one hand, but on the other, I have so much empathy for him and so much understanding for him. And I think, like, between him and Rhys, it's almost like how two different people handle very similarly terrible situations. And it's really interesting. It's almost like a compare and contrast, because they kind of do have very similar traumas in life, and they actually are in very similar positions in life, but they made very different decisions and took very different actions. And it's almost like a compare and contrast of how two different people approached the traumas and hardships of their lives. You know, my heart breaks for Tamlin, because I feel like so many times most people would have taken Tamlin's route, the route of giving up, the route of feeling broken and defeated, and like there's nothing more you can do, so you might as well just freeze and keep quiet, because if you do anything else, bad things happen. And so it's better just to freeze and keep quiet and not do anything. Rhys is taking a different route where he's doing more things. And we don't see that at this moment, but you know, we do see it like down the line. And so just reading through this, coming from the perspective of what I know Rhys is doing, it makes a lot more sense. There's a funny part when she goes under the mountain. I just think it's so funny. She did this with the cereal too. I'm talking about Farah. She did this with the cereal too. She gets to under the mountain and she's like walking through this cave, and she gets to a point where she doesn't know where to go. And so she thinks back to Alice, who helped her to the cave, and she goes, "Oh, Alice should have told me more information." And I was like, girl. Alice should have told you more information. Like, you knew what you were getting yourself into. Literally wasn't that big of a deal, but I just thought that was so funny. Like, Alice should have told you more information. Like, girl. She's under the mountain and she's in the middle of the trial. She just completed the first trial. And, you know, seeing Tamlin do nothing. I know that to him he's doing something by being frozen, by not reacting, because if he does react, then Amarantha will know that he cares for her and will be harder on her. So I understand that aspect. I just wish, as we all do, that Tamlin did something, took some sort of action. And it's so sad. Like, you see this man kind of just be broken, like right in front of our eyes. And it's really sad to see. Rhys, on the other hand, didn't necessarily maybe become broken in a way of giving up, but you know, as we read through the series, we see his soul was kind of broken in the way of him having to become this whole other person that he's not. So anyways, going off on a tangent, but again, the comparing and contrasting of their two characters has become like really interesting to me. And there's so many times when I have such mixed feelings around Tamlin, because I'm like, why is he not doing anything? Why is he just sitting there being silent? And then it's like, well, if he does react, then Amarantha will know that he cares for her, and like she'll treat her even more harshly. And then on the other hand, it's like, why isn't he helping her? Why is Lucien the only one going to heal her? Why is Rhys the only one going to heal her? And then Rhys goes into her cell and says, you know, Tamlin can't come down here because he's being watched. Every single move he makes is being watched. And so it's like, okay, so there's that. And it's just like, oh, the mixed feelings around him is so crazy. And when I first read this, I didn't really have those mixed feelings. They were kind of there, but not really. But now that I know what happens, those mixed feelings are stronger. But honestly, I'm feeling more empathy towards him, because I see how we get to where we get, because this man is just so broken. Like, it's seeing a man be broken, and it's so sad. The trials. Something that has always like kind of bothered me about the trials, and I think it's that Amarantha was cocky. Like, I think that was the thought behind it, is Amarantha got cocky, she got bored, essentially, and so she wanted to do these trials. But I always thought, like, when Farah agreed to these trials, she had to complete 3 tasks, and there was no rules put around what the tasks would be, what the tasks would entail. And I always thought, like, she could make these as crazy or impossible as she wants to make them. She could make it where, like, she brings in, like, Farah's family and makes her kill all of them. Do you know what I mean? Like, she could have made it really crazy to the point where it would have been impossible to do. Maybe the whole point is she puts these tasks and these chores that she has to do around the under the mountain. She has made these tasks underestimating Farah as a human and thinking that they were impossible to her. So that I understand. But I just always thought, like, you could literally make these whatever you want, because when they were setting the parameters of this deal, Farah was not thinking straight, and, like, why would she ever agree to 3 mystery tasks with 0 parameters? It could have literally been, like, stab yourself in the heart, like, and, like, you know what I mean? And it would have just all been pointless, you know what I mean? Even from the first time I read this book, that's something that's always nagged at me a little bit. Why didn't Amarantha make the tasks truly impossible? I want to think it's because it's showing her character. It's showing how lowly she thinks of humans, that she thinks these tasks are impossible. I'm not saying that they're not, like, insanely difficult. I wouldn't be able to do them. I don't think most people would be able to do them. But they are doable. And so I just find it interesting. Going along with I'm just going off, like, I had to do a spoilers. I had to, like, you can't do it, like, it's, what am I gonna say in the non-spoiler section for all this? Nothing. Okay, so then going along with the whole tasks and having to complete all of these things, in addition to the chores and all of that, I kind of love how it's not all smooth sailing, and it's not all because Farah has some unimaginable strength that no other human has. Like, she's very much a human through all of it, but a skilled one and a smart one at that. But there's also a lot of secret luck and help along the way. When she gets help from Lucian, when she gets help from Reese, when she gets help from Lucian's mom, and there's these people who help her along the way where she essentially gets lucky, situations where it's just simply luck that she's able to get through it. And I don't think that's unrealistic. I think it's very realistic. A lot of times the people who get through horrible situations, part of it is due to their own actions, but part of it is also just due to luck, and another part of it is due to strangers or others helping you and supporting you along the way. And so it's not all smooth sailing, and she's facing all of these challenges, all of these downfalls, all of these failures, this pain, sickness, like all of these things through all of it. And so my point is, I appreciate that her ultimately succeeding at these trials isn't so unbelievable and unrealistic. Fantasy books, dystopian books, anything that has trials and stuff, sometimes I feel like it does kind of fall into that, where it is kind of unrealistic, or it's like, okay, they're alive because, like, they're needed for the plot. You know what I mean? Like, that's why they're alive. And I kind of like how, I mean, obviously that's the case here. She has to stay alive or else there's no book. But it doesn't feel that way when you're reading it. It feels like she is starving, she's sick, she has all these injuries, but that's showing that she's still human, as she's going through these trials. She has ups and breakdowns and help along the way and luck that gets her through, as well as her own skills and smarts. I forgot how bad Reese was to her though. Like, I forgot that part. I did. Like, the way he talks to her when he first sees her at Talen's home, the way he talks to her in the cell, and how he essentially like uses her as a pawn to get to Talen, kind of causes her pain by grabbing her broken arm and all that sort of stuff. I forgot all of that. I forgot how like pretty terrible he was to her in the beginning, definitely. And so I need to keep reading, and I need to read the next book to see how that all comes together, because I know it all comes together and makes sense in a way, and I know the main thing that it all makes sense, but like the way he spoke to her was like pretty terrible. I was like, I forgot that you did that. Like, I forgot that you acted like that. That's great. Like, when I was thinking back to this before I read this book, I was thinking back to like all those parts and stuff, and I remembered how he came and he like healed her and stuff, but I remembered it as like he healed her. Like, he was great. Like, he healed her, Talon didn't. Okay. But like, that's not like really what happened. Like, he healed her, but he was pretty terrible to her while he was doing it. I don't think I could have let that go. I'd be like, listen, I know you saved me and healed me from this, and this, but also, like, there was one time where you treated me, like, really terribly, and I don't know if I can move on from that. You know what I mean? We're gonna see. Spoiler section is officially over. Overall thoughts is, I'm loving this book. I'm gonna keep reading, and I guess I will check in once I'm done. I'm a pretty slow reader, so I don't know if I'm going to finish it tonight, but I'm going to try to make a really good headway tonight. I'll see you guys hopefully tomorrow with a finished book, but we'll see. I have off of work tomorrow. I'm really excited about that. I think I'm going to read this and hopefully film the finished check-in during Adam's nap tomorrow. It'll be a great time. It's the next day, and I have finished A Court of Thorns and Roses for the second time. I'm just going to come right out and say it. As soon as I finished it, I got on my Fable and I marked finished, and I put 5 stars. And if you know Fable, you do the 5 stars, and then I did the mind blown icon. You can put like how the book made you feel. Did the mind blown icon. I think I loved this so much, like so much more than the first time. Like, I loved this. I ate this up. I am so excited. I haven't felt this way about a book in so long. I'm so excited to read the next book, and in all honesty, I've already started listening to the audiobook as I was doing my makeup to film this clip. I was listening to the audiobook. I absolutely adored this. I love the characters. I love the character development. I think reading this book, knowing what happens more into the series, gives everything a lot more meaning. So maybe that's why as well I'm enjoying it even more now, because everything has so much more meaning now because I have a whole background around it. I've said it so many times in this video already, but I'll say it again. If there's any book that you're like, maybe I should reread it, if there's any series, your favorite series you want, reread it. Reread it. Literally, there's so many things that I forgot, and there's so many things that I love about this book, and I loved it even more the second time. Our main character, Farah, had so much character development throughout the entire thing. And I really liked seeing her find confidence in herself and grow into herself and kind of find herself. And then at the end of the book, there's a big twist, but we won't get into that. But just in general, she found a lot more confidence in herself. To go from a life of living solely by your necessities, you only do what you absolutely need to do in order to survive, to actually having the space to find joy and find the things that you love and things that you care about. I loved seeing how much that grew her as a person and how that made her become herself. And just in general, I thought that was an interesting concept, almost talking about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, of when you just need your base needs met, nothing else is going to happen. But if you do have your base needs met, you know, kind of taking advantage of the time that we have and the abilities that we have and what we're able to do with our lives, because we could do so much with our lives. And I think there's quite a few characters in here. I find this with Nesta's character as well, where like there's so many things they could do with their lives and they haven't found that yet. They don't really know what that is yet. And it's kind of interesting seeing even just simply painting, finding the joy in painting, how much that grew her and kind of transformed her into a person, rather than just someone who was starving. Tamlin and her romance is so good. The lead up is so good. All the romance part of it, I just adore and love. And I don't really want to talk about it too much in a non-spoiler section, but I really love the romance aspect of this book. I do love that I wouldn't consider, I mean, okay, I guess it is. Is this considered a romantasy or a fantasy? I really don't know, but I mean, the plot is huge in this. I don't really consider, there's just so many other things going on. I don't consider the romance being the main part of the plot. That's not the main plot for me, and I really like that aspect of it. There's just so many other things going on, and so I love that there's other things happening other than the romance, and it makes it a lot more interesting. There's the themes of differences in classes, rich versus poor, and you have that on the human side. You also have that on the fairy side with the high fae and the lower fairies and all that sort of stuff. I really enjoyed that aspect. There was one part really like in the beginning of the book where Farah was talking to her sisters and they were arguing, and it was interesting because it was almost like they had a class difference in their own family, where they were wealthy before, but then that wealth went away, and they became very poor. And Farah was too young to really remember that wealthy time, and so her sisters still acted like they had that wealth and still acted that way. Her one sister, Nesta, was kind of making fun of her, saying like, you act like such a brute, and you know, you act like a, what did she say? I forget, but you act like you're in poverty. You know what I mean? Like, you act that way. And Farah kind of thought to herself, well, I didn't know anything before. You guys did, but I didn't. And I thought that was interesting, like essentially having a class difference in your own family. There's lots of plot twists that I love. I really love how developed all of the characters are, even down to her maid Alice, we learn a good deal about Alice's character, and I'm really interested to learn more about Alice as a character. And we even learn about her. We learn about like these side characters, about Lucian, about Tamlin, about Rhys, and about Nesta, and I love all the information and backstory that we get around the characters that I know will only be grown throughout the series. And I just appreciated that even more this time around. The pacing in this is fantastic. There's always something going on. I remember when I first read this, I thought it was slow. I do not feel that way. And maybe that's just because I have a deeper appreciation for everything happening in it this time around. But yeah, I did not feel like this was slow this time around at all. I felt like there was always something happening. And if it was slow for a reason. There were a lot of things that the male main character did to that I didn't like. And there were a lot of things where Rhys, who is another character who comes in, does that I didn't like. But there are things that happen later on in the series that make all of it kind of make sense and come together, or there's different outcomes. I can't talk about this in a non-spoiler series, in a non-spoiler section. But I would just say, when reading this book, it can be difficult to read the parts, especially from the main characters, especially from like Lucian, Tamlin, and Rhys. How they treat Farah can be a hard read. There's a couple parts where I was like, that's rough. I'm not loving how this is going down, how she's being treated, how she's being talked to, things that were happening. There was like, at one point, there was essentially drugging happening. Like they were drugging her. And while I'm reading it, even as a reread, I'm like, oh my God, I forgot those parts and I do not love those parts. But so if you're reading it and you're feeling that way, what I will say is you have to keep reading, not only to the end of the book, but for the rest of the series, to have all of that come together and make sense and have a conclusion and kind of fill in those gaps. I totally see how people read this and be like, oh, so-and-so treated her like this, so-and-so treated her, like, why would she, like, why are we okay with this? Well, keep reading. Keep reading. Keep reading. That's what I'm going to say. Keep reading. Keep reading. I have started A Court of Mist and Fury next, which, if I remember correctly, was my favorite book in this series. So I'm really excited about it. I just really love Farah's character, and I really appreciated how her character was done. I think a lot of times in fantasy, it's a pretty funny trend of having very insufferable female main characters, and I did not find her insufferable. I really, really like Farah. I think she's very human. She has her ups and downs and challenges and flaws and all of these sort of things, but it all makes sense for her character. It all makes sense for the world. It all makes sense for her story, and I love how she developed. I also don't think that anything that happened was completely unrealistic or crazy. I think a lot of times we have the female main character who is somehow stronger than everyone else and has all these special abilities. I don't think that's the case with Farah. I think she is very human, and she gets through her story and her challenges by her skill and her smarts, but also by a little bit of luck and a lot of help from others. And I think that's really nice to see. With that being said, I'm going to switch to the spoiler section in 3, 2, 1. Oh my God. The trials. Okay, I want to start with Rhys. I forgot how terrible Reese was to her. I'm not going to lie. That was a hard read. All the times that he drugged her with the wine and all of the nights where he took her dancing and made her dance and all of these sorts of things. That was, and the way that he talked to her, the way that he spoke to her, that was a really, really, really rough read. Anytime Tamlin or Lucian kind of talked to her in a very insulting way, I took it as, well, that makes sense for their characters as to what happens down the line. But I completely forgot, like, Reese spoke to her pretty badly as well and treated her badly as well. I knew that it would all come together in the end. And there is a reason for everything that Reese does. There is a reason for everything Reese does. Did I feel like he had to go about it so harshly? Like, I don't think he had to do that much. Like, you're doing a lot. But I feel like there was a reason for everything. In addition to that, the whole Amarantha thing and the trials, something clicked in my head that made sense to me is the way that she made the bargain. She made it so they weren't freed immediately. So she was never planning on freeing them to begin with. So the whole trials, what she made the trials to be didn't matter. Like, I was struggling with the fact, like, she could have made these trials truly impossible. That's not what she wanted. She just wanted to have fun with the trials because she knew in the end that they would never be freed anyways, whether she won them or not. And there was a really small possibility that she would actually win them. She didn't ever assume that Farrah would figure out the riddle. I think that's just her cockiness and her thinking that humans are stupid point. I do have to say, if I was in Farrah's position and I heard that riddle, I don't think I would have come up with that answer. I don't think I ever would have solved it. I think I would have died and everyone would have been enslaved for life, for eternity. So good on Farrah. The whole drugging aspect was hard. Like, that was a hard read. Even reading it now, even like now that I'm older, coming from kind of that perspective, it's a hard read about how she was drugged and Reese would force her to dance at these nights and she was like barely wearing any clothes and she was in this terrible position essentially. And that was a hard read. I understand the purpose. I understand why. It was just a tough read. It's so interesting, the whole scene of her stabbing the fairies in the hearts and getting to Tamlin, and he has the stone heart, and her answering the answer to the love, and then, you know, being saved and stuff. That was the part. Oh, my son is awake. That was the part that I remembered the most vividly. Adam, come on out, honey. He's just sitting on his bed yelling. Like, he can climb out of his bed and open his door and walk out, which is what he normally does. Adam, come on out, honey. Hello. You want to come out? Whenever you're ready. Come on out. Hello. Hello. What's mommy doing? Hey. What's going on? I know, it's a camera. I know. We're a little distracted. I think I'm going to end the video here because I have a feeling I've talked a lot and this is going to be a long video. So I will see you guys in part 2 for rereading Mist and Fury. And I have already started reading it and it's already getting good. So I'm pretty excited about it. You say bye-bye? Bye!